Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the chapter 1 of the Media and Information Literacy, the world of media and information literacy. The objectives. At the end of the chapter, the learners are expected to describe how communication is influenced by media and information, and identify the similarities and differences between and among media literacy, information literacy, and technology literacy. This chapter has 4 lessons in total, and the first lesson is communication, from interpersonal to mass communication. Let's give it some thought first. What is communication? Why do we communicate? Is it possible for a human being to live without communicating? How do we communicate? There are 2 common types of communication. The first one is non-verbal. Non-verbal, of course, means there are no words used when communicating. Signs, symbols, gestures, body language, facial expressions, colors, and others are used for communication. For example, you shake your head for no and you nod for yes. Or you may raise an eyebrow if you are skeptical about something. Those are examples of non-verbal cues. Verbal. On the other hand, it uses words. It can be in oral or written form. For example, talking. We talk when we want to express our feelings or thoughts. That is the most common way to communicate. Examples of written form are things that we read in social media, newspapers, books, periodicals, journals, or published research studies. It is good to express your thoughts, feelings, and opinion, but just a little reminder. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said, "He who believes in Allah and the last day must either speak good or remain silent," as recorded by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. We have to be cautious of our words. If you have nothing good to say, remember, speak a good word or remain silent. Let's talk about communication. What is communication? Communication refers to people or groups of people imparting or exchanging messages through speaking, writing, gestures, or even using other symbolic forms by utilizing a variety of channels for sending and receiving. Let's emphasize the part where it says imparting and exchanging. For a communication to take place, there has to be an expressed or conveyed idea, thoughts, or feelings to someone else. It might be a person, an entity, or a different organization, group of people, or just somebody else. The receiver of your message should be able to make sense of what you are trying to say, because if they didn't understand anything, then there's no communication. It is imperative that the receiver, the one you are talking to, should be able to make meaning of the message you are trying to impart, because you do not talk just to be heard, but you talk to be understood. We have mentioned messages earlier. What is a message anyway? Messages is a collection of symbols that appear organized or meaningful to those sending or receiving them, defined by Toro in 2009. Because again, both parties should be able to understand what they are trying to communicate about. Because what happens when we do not understand the context of what the other person is saying? We might misunderstand their meaning, and we might say something inappropriate, getting us misunderstood in return. Misunderstanding causes conflict. That is why effective communication is important. We have types of communication. Number 1, interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication is communicating face-to-face with someone we know or may not know. As defined by Toro in 2009, interpersonal communication is a form of communication that involves 2 to 3 individuals interacting through the use of their voices and bodies. For example, when you are talking to your friend directly, that is an interpersonal communication. Number 2, mediated interpersonal communication. Mediated interpersonal communication is like an interpersonal communication mediated through the use of devices such as pen, telephone, or computer. For example, when you're talking to your father or mother through Messenger, then that becomes mediated interpersonal communication, since Messenger, the app, is in between you and your parents. Number 3, small group communication. Small group communication is a discourse between 3 or more persons. When your barkada, or circle of friends, are hanging out, that is an example. Also, when your teacher divides you into small groups in the classroom, then your group discusses for answers, that is a sample of a small group communication. Next, we have organizational communication. Organizational communication is seen in a working environment. Different types of organization have different ways of communication as well. The main difference of this communication to others is that it's done within an organization with a hierarchy of authority and its own system of communication within the organization itself. For example, in a huge company where the CEO declares a new policy on dress code, of course, the VPs or the vice presidents and the middle management will probably get the message first before they forward it to the managers, and the managers in return forward it to the operations employees. Finally, we have public communication. Public communication involves one person communicating to a large number of people. For example, a morning assembly when a stud is addressing the entire school, or during the State of the Nation address when the president is delivering his speech to the public. Activity 1.1. List at least 2 samples of each type of communication. Be ready to recite during the class discussion. Note, all of the activities in this chapter should be encoded in a single Word file. File name should be MEL, your last name, and the first letter of your first name, Chapter 1 activities.doc, to be submitted on Friday through the designated group chat. Thank you. This is the end of Lesson 1. See you in Lesson 2.